Well, good morning, everybody. Good morning. Thank you very much for the invitation to come here this morning to talk about this subject. So we're going to look at the Red Hand and the Shamrock, and I've called this presentation Entwined Misconceptions, basically because it's a lot of things. If you look at our history throughout the whole island of Ireland, we're full of misconceptions. There's full of various different things. And I've chosen these two subjects, the Red Hand and the Shamrock, but there's many others that I could, like the poppy. The poppy's a contentious, particularly now this time of year in the run up to the 1st of July. As I was saying, I'm actually, literally when I finish here, I'm on a flight over to France today for a ceremony on the 7th, because on the 7th of June it's the anniversary of the Battle of Messines. So it's the 25th anniversary of the opening of the Irish Peace Park today, so I'm over for that on Wednesday. But these two symbols really are two that when you look at them can be quite contentious, but they shouldn't be, because throughout our whole history they're actually linked and they're entwined right through each other, and I'm going to show that through the presentation. Hopefully there's things you'll recognise, but there'll also be maybe a few things that you don't, and hopefully by the end of this you'll have learnt something, or there's something new that you haven't considered before. So as Northern Ireland continues its post-conflict transition period, there are many of us within this society that still struggle with the idea that really we have this shared history that binds us. I just mentioned the First World War. The First World War very much is one of those topics that combines us. And I look a wee bit at the military history and how the Red Hand and the Shamrock features through military history as well. But you know, we have so much on this island of shared history that combines us all together. In particular, in the run-up to Northern Ireland 100, the anniversary of the formation of Northern Ireland in 2021, basically it was so contentious, and you couldn't have missed it. You know, hearing about it on the news. Some people saying it should be celebrated, some people saying it shouldn't be celebrated. Was the right word celebrated? Is it commemorated? There was even big discussions at certain levels, high levels, of what is the right terminology to even say when it came to commemorating the birth of Northern Ireland itself. But everybody is entitled to their own opinions. That's the one thing. We're very lucky we live in a democracy. Though with society today it's very hard to tell that we do actually have a democracy, because sometimes you can't actually say what you want to say where you should be allowed to. Symbols have long been contentious, as I was saying, issue on this island, and hopefully then through this presentation I'm going to take these two very prominent symbols and actually just try and entwine them, show how they are entwined, but also give them each their separate identities. The picture that you see here on the screen is actually one that was used for commemorating one of the anniversaries of Northern Ireland. It was issued by the Northern Ireland Tourist Board. You couldn't see it, honestly I couldn't. There was nothing like this by in particular the likes of the Tourist Board or anybody brought out for the anniversary of the 100th anniversary of Northern Ireland, because now again these two symbols, this was for the 75th anniversary, but by the time we get to the 100th they're contentious and now people don't feel comfortable using them. So you can see how those things have changed already. The Red Hand is really rooted in Celtic culture, Gaelic culture, as a sign of a great warrior. It's always been used and it's always been thought of as the symbol of the Red Hand as reflecting that of a great warrior here within the island. And it is believed that it really does date back to pagan times. Some of the very early, if you're looking back into it, it's right into pagan times you see the Red Hand being used and being referenced as well. It's first mentioned back in the 13th century, so you can see how long back it has been used. So why is it all of a sudden within our society it has become that contentious of an issue? And it has been used by many Irish clans throughout that history, and we'll look at this one here in particular. Here you have the O'Neill clan as well. So there are numerous versions of the tale to do with the origins of the Red Hand, and particularly remember its oral traditions, because this is at a time when not everybody could read or write, and how things were told were through songs, through various different talking to each other, stories. People would sit round in the evenings and talk to each other, and those stories were carried down. So remember, it's not always, it's very hard sometimes to see it in written text. It's those oral stories. But you've also got to remember with oral stories, that old game of Chinese whispers, that things, once you tell one, I could start here and tell you one thing, and by the time we get to here, it's something completely different by the time we get to the end, because it's changed somewhere in the middle. So again, you've got to remember that these stories have changed. But one of those myths particularly is that the best known one is that the Kingdom of Ulster had at one time no rightful heir to the throne of Ulster. And because of this, it had been agreed that there was going to be a boat race would take place, and whoever's hand, it's basically what it said, whoever's hand touches the shore first shall be the king. It didn't say that the person's hand had to be on the end of their arm or had to be attached to their elbow, to this bit. It basically, so again, what you have is somebody reading into it and deciding themselves, well, how do you actually win the race? So one potential king was actually wanted the kingship so much of Ulster that he basically thought about this and he went, right, okay, nowhere did anybody in the rules or regulations tell me that it had to be on the end here. So the myth goes that he cut off his hand and he was losing the race, so he cut off his hand and he threw his hand up on the shore. And because of that, with the technicality, the story goes that he then became the King of Ulster. So you can see that as well, these myths. And that hand actually belonged to O'Neill, and he would then, that would be taken then as the O'Neill clan's family crest. And here you can see the O'Neill clan's family crest here, and right in the middle of it is the red hand of Ulster, and you can see as well. And which hand is it? Can you just make it out? Right or left? Right. So you can see the right hand there being used as well. And we'll look at the significance of the difference between right hand and left hand as well as we go through, just to confuse matters as well. So the shamrock, to look at the shamrock then. The shamrock is synonymous really with St. Patrick, and for a long time St. Patrick had a colourful tradition as well. And it also means the shamrock means various different things to different people. I can ask this room what the shamrock means to you or to you, and everybody will have that different opinion because you're entitled to your own opinion of what it is. But really, a lot of times what the shamrock stands for is national pride. People want to be honoured to have the shamrock, religious beliefs behind it, also of historical beliefs or facts about the shamrock, and also to the fact it means a lot of occasions the shamrock people wear the shamrock for good luck. Anybody that's been down south, you know that you're always going to see leprechauns and shamrocks, they're linked together, and that's something that's changed over the years as well. But basically St. Patrick, he used it to spread the word Christianity. He brought Christianity to the island and he was about using it. It was also then, it was said that St. Patrick used the shamrock to show that the three leaves stood for the Father, the Son and the Holy Ghost. So it was the Trinity as well. And basically, as well as I said earlier on, that's back to pagan Irish as well during the 5th century. You can see the shamrock and it representing the Father, the Son and the Holy Ghost. But again, that can mean various different things to different people. The tradition of wearing a shamrock on St. Patrick's Day can be traced right back to the 1700s. And then I'll look later on, we'll have a look at it, as I said to you, in the military tradition, how it has become very much military as well, and because of Queen Victoria and the Boer War. And the shamrock can be found just growing like a flower, like a weed, whatever you want to call it, throughout the whole Isles. So it's not like it's something, it's a bit like, as I say, the poppy, the way the poppy grows in the battlefields. This time of year, and last week first we started to see the poppies blooming in the battlefields over in France and Flanders. And in the next coming weeks, they will become more prominent as well throughout the fields. The shamrock's the same, it just grows, you can see it growing throughout the fields. So here again we have one of the badges and you can see it says Northern Ireland proudly on it, and there you have the shamrock and the red hand in the middle of it. This again was another badge that was released to celebrate Northern Ireland, the birth of Northern Ireland. So throughout our history, it was okay to celebrate Northern Ireland. There was no issue over celebrating and looking at the birth of this, of Northern Ireland itself. It's only recently that it has become contentious. So throughout this island's history, there has been a misconception of ownership surrounding these emblems. It could be argued that the red hand is commonly associated with the Protestant Unionist Loyalist community or the PAL community, but in fact it is used by both traditions, and especially when you look at sport and you look at the various different emblems and badges used by sport in the sporting arena, and again we'll have a look at those. Yet today it is most commonly linked with murals. You are very much, if you walk up and down the road here, you'll see the red hand appearing on the murals all throughout the road itself. Whereas the Shamrock is strongly linked to St Patrick and is in fact one of Ireland's national emblems as well, along with of course the harp, which you see the harp and the crown of the harp is there. And it is predominantly associated with the Catholic Nationalist Republican community, or the CNR community. And again, that's just because of change in times and how things have started to develop and started to change over recent years. It's not back, you look, as I said, you look at the badges from the 75th anniversary or back through the First World War or pre that. There was no misconceptions around the red hand and the Shamrock at all. Back in that period. It's within our generation that these things have started to change. So to look at how one big thing that really was a national incident that took place, and you can really see the use of the red hand in it, is the red hand as a union of solidarity. And this took place this was used predominantly through the Dublin lockout of 1913-1914, which was one of the biggest, or the biggest, industrial struggles within Irish history at the time, where you had 25,000 workers were locked out of their place of employment by over 400 employers, refusing to sign an undertaking to not be a member of James Larkin's Irish Transport and General Workers Union, the ITGWU. Jim Larkin himself was actually an Irish Republican. He was a socialist, but predominantly he was a trade union activist. And what he was trying to do, if you think back to 1913, well, you won't be able to think back, but if you look at looking back at 1913, 1914, it was a period where there was no workers' rights. Workers didn't have a tea break in the morning. They didn't have a standard half-hour lunch break. They didn't have smoke breaks. They were starting really early in the morning and could work right through to really late at night. All these different things. There was no health and safety. We've gone health and safety mad today. Back then there was no health and safety as well. So it's all holidays. They had no such thing as holidays, days off, all those things. There was no rights for workers. And this is where the trade unions start to come in to try and bring in some of these rights for workers. Also for the simple fact as well, for young boys and young girls were leaving school at 10, 11 years of age and were going into the workforce. They were going into the mills. They were coming post boys, telegram boys, all these different things. Kids were going on to things called half and half education, half into the mills or half into the workforce. These were things that the union were trying to change. So whether that's good or bad, that's your own opinion, but what it was trying to do was bring in some of the rights and privileges that we have today as a workforce. So the trade union badges became very prominent or commonplace during the rise of these trade unions. Mostly among the previously unorganised, who hadn't been organised before all this, the dockers. Again, think back here in Ulster, we had the biggest shipbuilding industry, we had the biggest linen industry, then we had the rope works, we had the mills, all those big industrialised, it was industrialised Belfast at the time. And what you have is no rights for the workers. And the dockers within Britain, within Ireland and Britain, within Liverpool, within the shipyard, they didn't have any of these rights. So they're starting to look at it and say, well, hold on a minute, this is maybe something we do want to have. So the the employers at the time wanted these workers to turn around and say, we won't become part of a union. Because the employers, think about it, were getting worried. They would have to pay, that would cost them extra money to give people holidays, to give them breaks. What, stop for a lunch break, an hour lunch break, half an hour lunch break. You know, you think of all those different things, what it was going to cost. Now today we have minimum wage. They didn't have minimum wage back then. These are all the different things that the trade unions trying to do. And the employers don't want these men to join these unions, to join the unions, to become part of it. But the unions decided, or the men were deciding, that they wanted to. And how to signify how you supported the union or you didn't support the union was you wore a badge. Very simply, that's how you stood out, was these badges. And these are the two badges that were brought in by the ITGWU. Here's the first one here. You can see it's the red, very clearly the red hand of Ulster, the red hand. And it has the IT 1913 WU on it. So the men that supported the union or supported James Larkin wore the badges. It was the Let Them See. And the top one there you can see very different. And again, look at the colours. Very much predominantly red and the blues and bits of white going through it as well. And it's the 1913 stamped on the badges as well. So these signify that you wore these, so that you, a bit like, so that your fellow workers wouldn't be calling you a scab, or wouldn't, a bit like you think of the miners' strike as well. Back in the years ago, when you look through the history of the miners' strike and what was going on there, whether you were going into work, whether you were going to cross the picket line or you weren't. So you wore these badges so everybody could tell very quickly whether you were supporting what or whether you were supporting the other. And what happens then is, out of that then comes the Irish Citizen Army, the IC. And this was a small paramilitary group of trained trade union volunteers who were from the ITGWU, and they were established within Dublin. And what they were to defend the workers for the demonstrations that were taking place, because what had happened was the employers had paid for their own vigilantes. They had paid the Dublin police off. It's the time when backhanders would have been paid. So the employers had the police force in their pocket. So what the organisation decided to do, the unions did, was set up their own vigilantes or their own paramilitary organisation to try and protect the workers. It was formed again by James Larkin, James Connolly, Jack White, on the 23rd of November 1913. These names, James Larkin, James Connolly, Jack White, are all names synonymous with, if you think about it, the GPO, the Easter Rising, all those events that later take place in 1916 as well. And other prominent members were Countess Markovich, who again was part of the whole Easter Rising. She was one of the 3 females that was in the GPO in Easter 1916, and Frances Sheffington as well. These are prominent females at a time when women have no vote, when women have no say, when women aren't really supposed to be working. That doesn't change until after the First World War, or during the First World War, when it's a time of huge social change for women as well. And in 1916 then, these had all predominantly taken place through the Easter Rising as an armed insurrection to try and end British rule in Ireland at the time. So the Irish Citizen Army actually adopt the Red Hand. So you're thinking of the Irish Citizen Army as a Republican organisation, yet they adopt the Red Hand, and the top hat there is a slouched cap. And if you think of anybody's looked at the UVF of 1913 as well, the Ulster Volunteer Forces formed in 1913 because of Home Rule. So you have Home Rule happening in Ireland at the same time as you have the workers' strike. The UVF adopts slouch caps as well. The only difference is that the Irish Citizen Army go for a deep green, where the UVF go for more like a beigey colour, like a beige more military colour that we would associate with military today. And here you have is a couple of plaques to commemorate. So this is a plaque here that says, in memory of Captain Sean Connolly, and Lieutenant Sean O'Reilly, and their names, who were part of the Irish Citizen Army who gave their lives for the Republic of Ireland in 1916. So again, predominantly this organisation who had become prominent during the Dublin lockouts of 13 start to become even more prominent by the time we get to 1916. And then this is a modern day plaque that was unveiled for the anniversary in 2016. And you can see there the colours have changed. It's the green, the white, the orange, but yet still prominent in the middle. They have kept the red hand there as well. Moving then, as I mentioned, the Ulster Volunteer Force, the Ulster Unionist Council. Here you have this badge here. There's back then in 1913, during the time of the Home Rule crisis, you had one Unionist party. Today, how many Unionist parties have we got? But back then, you had one Unionist party, one Nationalist party. Very strong parties, and they were able to do what they needed to do for the country. And what you had then was the Ulster Unionist Council. James Craig was a member of it, and he had brought in Sir Edward Carson. Edward Carson then becomes the leader of the Ulster Unionist Council. James Craig himself was very much logistical, more in the background. He was the organiser, he was the brains behind the operation, a former soldier, he had seen time, and he was instrumental in the setup of the Ulster Volunteer Force. And what you have here, the Ulster Unionist Council, you can see, were launched in Belfast in March 1905. And in their badge, and this is very rare one here, back from the time, and this says Union is strength, and you can see the Union flag, the harp that I mentioned earlier on of Ireland, and also predominantly right in the middle what you have is the shamrock and the red hand with the blood coming from it as well. It starts to be adopted, that you see then adopted by the Ulster Volunteer Force as well, who were formed in 1913. And there you have one of their badges that says "For God and Ulster" around it, and also the red hand on it. And what hand is it we got there? Right hand. Left. Yeah, I think that one actually might be an image of the way the photograph is gone, but it should be, we should be looking at the right one. And so what you have then now is what is happening in Ireland because of the struggle around the Home Rule crisis. You have, out of these two political parties, as in Unionism and Nationalism, you have two organisations being formed, military organisations then being formed, as in the Ulster Volunteer Force, and then you have the Irish Volunteer Force as well. But the Irish Citizen Army become part of that as well, are very much involved in that armed struggle as well, alongside the Irish Volunteer Force. And you have these two organisations, and you can see how the red hand and the shamrock become intertwined in that. Here's a couple of postcards that we have in the Somme Museum. And again, remember back, this is a time when it's all about propaganda, and it's postcards are what you would get. It's now we send out a text message, you send out an email, you look at Facebook, all those types of things. Back then it was about producing postcards, and people bought the postcards, and that's how you got your message across. This one here we won't have Home Rule, and you have the shamrocks on it, you have the red hand, Edward Carson, Ulster will fight and Ulster will be right. The one at the top in the middle there, what you have is Bonner Law coming through, and you have the police standing with a big red hand again to symbolise Ulster, saying stop, no thoroughfare, you're not coming through. So again, it's the message that's been sent through, the propaganda. And the one on the far corner, again, you have Bonner Law, you have Edward Carson, and in the middle you have the King, King George as well. One king, one flag, one fleet, one empire. It's all about one. It's all about unity, coming together. It's about unifying. It's about Northern Ireland being part of the United Kingdom, or being part of that bigger picture as well. But these are some of the postcards that we used at the time. I said about military and the history coming through of the shamrock being used through military. Queen Victoria decreed over 120 years ago that soldiers from Ireland should wear a sprig of shamrock in recognition of fellow Irish soldiers who had fought bravely in the Boer War. A tradition continued today by British soldiers anywhere, wherever they're serving. It's continued today, from both the north and the south of Ireland. And this was even following partition as well in 1921. And over there you see the Queen Victoria's message, and it says, "The Queen, her army, message to the troops. I have heard with the deepest concern of the heavy losses sustained by my brave Irish soldiers. I desire to express my sympathy and my admiration of the splendid fighting qualities which they have established throughout these trying operations." And that's on the 28th of February 1900. And that's when it's decreed by Queen Victoria that all Irish soldiers were be presented with a sprig of shamrock on St Patrick's Day. And that is a tradition that has carried through right to the day. You have the Irish Guards being presented with them, you have the Royal Irish Regiment, and you have, here we have, this is the current now Prince and Princess of Wales, and this is with the Irish Guards, and this is a tradition, as I say, is still very much carried through today. The Princess of Wales is now actually the Colonel-in-Chief of the Irish Guards. At the time it was actually her husband, Prince William was the Colonel-in-Chief, but that has now changed. But you can see that is a tradition. The Queen Mother always made sure that she presented and she was there, and it's in the calendar of the royal household that they always do this on St Patrick's Day for the military. Wherever they are in the world, they will be presented with the shamrock. And here we have some of the badges, the military badges used through Irish regiments throughout their history. This is the current one that you'll see in the Royal Irish today. You have some other ones that have been used through the TA. You have 107 Brigade, the one with the red hand and the shamrock was the old 107 Brigade, who were part of the 36th Ulster Division, who basically, you have 107 Brigade, 108 Brigade and 109 Brigade of the Ulster Division, and then 107 Brigade was the only brigade number that was contained or continued with the whole way through up until about 2000, and that was then became 38 Brigade. And 38 Brigade would still wear that symbol today. And you can see the shamrock very predominantly used through our military, British military, but Irish soldiers within the British military. And then here we have the UN and also the Irish Defence Forces as well. And they would still, the Irish Defence Forces get their shamrock, and all UN soldiers, if they serve either from the island of Ireland, they get presented with their shamrock as well on St Patrick's Day. So this is a long established tradition that keeps going through, and the military are very proud of St Patrick's Day as their day, and also for wearing the shamrock on that day. This is the red hand, and the shamrock again can be found on badges and crests of numerous organisations and sporting clubs, as I said. From the red hand on the National Graves Association, my Irish isn't very good to pronounce it in Irish for you, but it basically is the Irish National Graves Association. And they maintain all the graves of Irish Republicans who died in the pursuit of a united Ireland. And then we'll look at the shamrock as well in the Royal Ulster Constabulary. Here we have one of these graves, and this is in Milltown Cemetery. So if you go up to the Republican plot in Milltown Cemetery, you will find graves that have the red hand on it. Again, that is going back towards the, looking back to from the time of 1913 and the lockouts and where that had come through. And you can see that their symbol is the red hand as well. And it's down here on the plinth that's on it, you can see the red hand and the badge. And this guy here, you can see he was killed in 1920. In 1920, that would have been part of what was the pogroms that were taking place. The riots were taking place just prior to partition here in Belfast, and this is one of the guys that was killed in it. And you can see, and here we have another one. This is a grave of an IRA member killed during the pogroms as well in 1921. And here you have him, and he's sitting in the Republican plot, and he's Freddie Fox, and there very prominently on his grave is the red hand that we would more predominantly think of as the red hand of Ulster today. And then, or both the red hand and the shamrock can be used as well. Here we have, this is again an item, an artefact from the collection in the Somme Museum. This is a postcard that was sent home by a member, a soldier who had been formerly in the Ulster Volunteer Force of 1913, and then he had been a soldier in the 36th Ulster Division during the First World War. And he had this postcard made. What you could do in France and Belgium, the soldiers could commission. These were very popular. You will see these postcards, some of them very similar, but you could commission the ladies within Belgium or France to do these for you, to embroider them. And this is one that he has had commissioned, and you can see here it's got the flag, you can see the Union flag, the Irish flag with a harp, the Shamrock, and very much the red hand in the middle, and for God and Ulster as well there on it. And then here we have, as I said, about the First World War. On Wednesday, it's the 7th of June, it's the anniversary of the Battle of Messines. It's the 106th anniversary, and basically this is a battle where you have both divisions, the 36th Ulster Division and the 16th Irish Division. So you have Sir Edward Carson and James Craig's men alongside John Redmond's men going into battle side by side simultaneously at the Battle of Messines. And very much throughout the records that we have within the museum, there was no animosity, they got on very well. In actual fact, we have a soldier from the 36th Ulster Division who said he would rather have soldiers from the 16th Irish Division on his right or his left than he would have the French or any other division alongside him. So just showed you the high esteem that they actually did have for each other. But what you see is the Shamrock, and this is again the same badge that you would see on soldiers today within the Royal Irish. And there you have the badge of the 36th Ulster Division. Now look at the difference of the hand. The left hand. So why is there a left hand for the Ulster Division and a right hand for the UVF? So it was decided that when actually the First World War broke out, there would be a conscious decision that orders were given that they would keep the badges different and use different hands. So that even though many members from the Ulster Volunteer Force had gone in and joined the 36th Ulster Division, to make a difference to the division, because there would be other people joining the 36th as well, they would use a different hand. And a lot of people get confused, and sometimes you'll see the wrong hand on the Ulster Division as well. But this is the correct hand that should be used. Actually, the most important bit in these titles is the brackets, is the prefix. Because anything that's actually prefixed is more important than anything on the right or the left of it in English. So 16 and 36 were literally, today we think 36 is a really important number because it's the 36th Ulster Division, or the same with the 16th Irish Division. 36 was just dished out. It could have been the 7th Ulster Division, it could have been the 12th Ulster Division. There's no significance at all in either the 16 or the 36. Division is division because the division is part of a military makeup, which would have been about 10 to 12,000 men in that as a division at the time, and then that's broken into 3 brigades, as I said, 107, 108 and 109. It's then broken down, then into companies, then into platoons and so forth, and sections after that. But the words that make them significant is Ulster in prefix. And that was done because Sir Edward Carson and Sir James Craig sat down with Kitchener, who was Secretary of State for War, and actually a condition of them promoting and asking for the Ulster Volunteer Force to join up and to go and serve in Kitchener's new army was that the division was a bit like the PALS battalions at the time were being formed all over the rest of the place, was to make their division significant was that Ulster, the word Ulster went into it, and that it was in brackets because the prefix makes it the most important bit within the letter. So when people drop the prefix, it's actually wrong. And when Kitchener agreed to that, John Redmond then sat down with him and went, well, if they're getting brackets in their title, we want Ulster and brackets in our title. So they did. So they got Irish, and brackets in their title. And then the 10th Irish Division were afforded the same honour as well. So you have the 10th Irish Division, the 16th Irish and the 36th. It was basically to show what part they came from. But think of it a bit like a PALS battalion. After the Battle of the Somme, and into about 1917 before Messines, and definitely in 1918, the records show that Kitchener tried to remove Ulster from 36th Ulster Division. He actually tried to have it removed officially, because he said by the time it had gone to subsequent battles, it was no longer an Ulster division, because many of the men from Ulster had been killed. By this stage we're thinking, remember the Battle of the Somme, you know, the figures, the casualty figures that have come through. Then you're starting to see Scottish and English men having to go into the Ulster division. But but Carson and Craig argued that it still hadn't lost its Ulster ethos, and that again Ulster would have to be staying, and they fought to have it kept, and Kitchener said okay, and he let it stay, and that's what is the importance of it. So if you look at the history, there was a move to have Ulster actually taken out of 36th Ulster Division. So it's maybe a good thing that it, well, it definitely is a good thing that it didn't. It kept that Ulsterness to it, the same as then the other two divisions as well. And here we have then, this is the door. If anybody's been over to the Ulster Tower in France, if you walk into the tower, this is just above the door. You mightn't even notice it because it's just as you're walking in through the doors, but it says, and you can see the hand there again, and it says 1914-18, Memorial to the 36th Ulster Division, and in brackets, and to the other men of Ulster who served in the Great War. The Ulster Tower is not just there to commemorate the 6 counties. The Ulster Tower is there to commemorate the 9 counties of Ulster, because the Ulster Tower was actually started, the work on the Ulster Tower started on the 19th of November 1918 in the Unionist Council's meeting in Belfast. Carson and Craig put forward that there should be a memorial to commemorate the 36th Ulster Division and the men from Ulster. Bearing in mind that the armistice had only been called on the 11th of November, by the time we get to the 19th of November, a couple of days later, they actually were having a meeting and it was decided that there would be a memorial to it. It's why the Ulster Memorial Tower is the first memorial on the Western Front. The likes of the Thiepval Memorial. So the Ulster Tower was dedicated on the 19th of November 1921. Thiepval Memorial didn't open to 32. The Men in Gate didn't open to 28. Many of the other big memorials didn't open. So we were way ahead of everybody else when it came to the Ulster Memorial Tower. But another thing is, it's not just there, because again, it opens in November 1921. That's right in the middle of partition taking place as well. So Ulster hadn't by that stage been divided. So the tower actually is there to commemorate Cavan, Donegal and Monaghan as well, which is part of the 9 counties. Sometimes people don't realise that it's there. It has a significance now as well. Here we have a couple of things again from just after the First World War. You have the Red Hand of Ulster. This was a booklet that was brought out by the women at the time to try and raise money for the prisoners of the 36th Ulster Division, get them money to help support their families, and it's a short history of the Ulster Division. And similarly, you have a Christmas card here, everywhere and always faithful. It's the 16th Irish Division, and it's a Christmas card from 1917. And again, you can see predominantly the 2 symbols being used there in the middle of it. Here's 2 uniforms that we have down in the Somme Museum. And you can see them. This one here is the Irish Volunteers jacket. I mentioned them being formed by John Redmond's men, and you can see very clearly on the epaulette here you have the shamrocks, and on the button you have the harp. And this one over here is from World War II, is actually the Royal Artillery uniform from World War II, and there you have sewn onto the arm the red hand, but it's the red hand again that you would see on the flag, the Ulster flag, and also you'd have seen for the UVF with the blood dripping from the bottom of it. So again, throughout our history, they have continued to be used in different formats, and in military very much as well. And here we have a uniform as well, a First World War officer's uniform, and you can see this officer, this is the South Irish Horse. And you can see this officer has actually won a military cross, but he's also been mentioned in dispatches because he has the little, you can see the little flower on the medal as well. And you can see there he's got his other 2 medals there. And on both epaulets you can see that they very significantly and very prominently is the shamrock there as well, but yet on the badges you have, or the bottom, sorry, is the harp. Moving forward a bit, I showed you earlier on the badges that had been issued by the Tourist Board to celebrate the birth of Northern Ireland, the history of Northern Ireland. Very much this is looking back at a period through the 30s. This is after the Second World War. Tourism, trying to get people to travel again, and this is tourism, and it was sold. And actually, I can't joke about this today because we actually have it. But Ireland was sold as sunshine, legend, and sport. I'm glad to say we're back to the sunshine again. So we are, but the legend and the sport. And here you have some very significant posters of the time. Here's the one that was again used by the Tourist Board to try and market to the American market, predominantly trying to get Americans here. Getting Americans to look at their Irish history. Every American wants to be connected. Every president of America wants to have a connection to Ireland. So there you have it again. And here you can see the sunshine, the legend, the sport, the Giant's Causeway, the cliffs. You can see the Shamrock, the Red Hand. No controversy about using both. And in the middle you see the image which is in the shape of the Giant's Causeway, but in the middle you see we all live in quaint little cottages with thatched roofs as well on the top of it. So you can see what they're trying to do. They're trying to market to the Americans what we are. Up in the top when you see I don't wear green, I wear red, white and blue. You know, and this again for St. Patrick's Day, where if you look at the TV today and look at St. Patrick's Day, go to Boston in America, go to New York, it's literally, it's tricolours everywhere. It's been hijacked and taken over, and you see a real difference now. But yet back in the 30s, they're saying you wear red, white and blue, and there's a shamrock. And okay, it's the American flag, but you can see the Americans are celebrating the red, white and blue with the shamrock, where now it really has predominantly changed to the point where people now from various different communities don't feel comfortable around St. Patrick's Day. And here we have then, this is the Shamrock building. So this is the Shamrock building. It was built for the World Trade Fair in New York in 1939, costing thousands and thousands of pounds, okay, that the Irish government, the Southern Irish government paid for. And here you have a view from the top of it. And what it is, the building is built in the shape of a shamrock. If you look at it, there's a pond out the front that's green, dyed green. You can't maybe see it from the image. And in the middle of it is the map of Ireland as well, is in the pond, in the middle of the pond. This had the slogan, "A New World for Tomorrow." This was totally done for this fair in 1939. Afterwards, a couple of years later, it was totally taken away. It was just dismantled and taken away. So it was money that was spent for nothing. But the whole point was that when you were flying from America across from the sky, it was all done from the sky, because it made no impact from the ground. You wouldn't have known. It was about you flying to a new world. It was about you flying from America to Ireland and what it would look like. So there was thousands of pounds spent, and it was basically for a fair, this trade fair, this building was done. So you can see again how Irish tourism had started to change. The south of Ireland tourism had changed to the American market, appealing to the Americans to come money, to get the money across here as well. But even then, in the Northern Ireland Tourist Board, you can see that there was no problem using the Red Hand and the Shamrock.
Excuse me, Karen. The last slide, the aerial view, when you look at the pond, you can definitely see the map of Ireland.
Oh yes, yeah, it's the whole map of Ireland. So you can see it there in that one in green, but in this one,
it's not so prominent.
It's not so prominent. And you can see it, but the whole idea was the visual effect of it. But how long out a window of a plane do you look? Really? And actually, if you think about it on a plane, there's only the people that are in the window seats that can actually see out it as well. So I don't know where the thinking was going on this, but it was one of those things when I was doing the research I came up with, and I had to put it in because I just couldn't believe, again, at a time of, again, think about it, 1939 is just after, you know, the World War II. You know, you're thinking, or just before, we're just around that time of another war, 39-45. So this money that we have spent on this period of time. So coming forward and looking at things as well that maybe we see every day but have taken for granted. The Northern Ireland Fire Service, Fire and Rescue now as they're called. There's the red hand as a badge in the middle of it. I recognise that badge. My dad was a fireman for 25 years through the Troubles, and basically I never, until I was looking at it, he had it on his uniforms, he had it everywhere, but I'd never actually taken the time and looked at it until I was doing the research for this project. Here we have the Royal Ulster Constabulary, which of course now is the PSNI, and it's changed. But back then, you have the Shamrock, the Harp, and the Crown. No issue over it then. The top one, I mentioned earlier on about linen industry. We were the biggest linen industry. We supplied nearly 90% of all linen to the First World War. All the planes, Sopworth planes, that were made out of linen or canvas and linen came from Ulster. Parachutes, even though soldiers weren't normally given parachutes, but parachutes as well. Tents. If you think of the tents, the bell tents that all the soldiers stayed in, that all came from here as well. And here you have a postcard from barbers who were one of the big linen industry, particularly around Lisburn area, Dunmurry. And there you have the Shamrock and the red hand intertwined the whole way through it, and the red hand in the middle of it. To Northern Ireland, Great Northern Ireland Railways of Ireland, again, you have the both being used in those symbols as well. Through to sport, as I said earlier on, we'd look at some of the sporting ones. And if you look at GAA and the Tyrones, here you have red hands already, and the red hand is used by Tyrone in the GAA. You have the Armagh Hockey Club, and you can see the red hand, the shamrock, the hockey sticks, the apple representing the apple county, and the cross again as well, because Armagh is very much the centre for Christianity there with the cathedral and within Armagh Cathedral. And then you have the bowling, the Civil Service Bowling Association, and you have the Northern Ireland NI in it, and I think that actually even says Imperial. Imperial then became a bad word and was taken out of a lot of things. Same with the War Graves, the Commonwealth War Graves Commission, who look after the graves. They used to be the Imperial War Graves Commission until Imperial was a bad word, a dirty word, and was taken out, and then they became the Commonwealth. To Northern Ireland football, to the Football Association, the Shamrock as well, to Ulster Rugby with the red hand, and to the Irish Rugby and Football Union, and there you see the Shamrocks in it as well. And then here we have, and again, they've been in the news again recently because up at Prince Henry Park, or Henry Jones's Park up at the top of East Belfast, again because the GAA are training up at the area there in near Lead Hill in East Belfast. This is the East Belfast GAA club, formed by Protestant and Catholic, and you can see that they've thought quite hard about their badge when they've done it. 2020, they've got Harland and Wolf Cranes, they've got the red hand, the shamrock, the thistle, and basically they have tried to make their badge now all-inclusive for today's generation. Through to Guinness. I'm sure none of you like a pint of Guinness, particularly in this weather. Here we have the Guinness bottle. Guinness, very much a Protestant family, Protestant business, but everybody thinks very differently because it's in Dublin, where it is, but yet they used to actually have the red hand label on the bottles. And this is quite a rare bottle you can see here, and this is with the sticker. But the reason the red hand was on the bottles of Guinness was linked to this, because this is the Irish bonding. So the Irish bonding, who used to be in Prince Regent Road in East Belfast, used to do all the bottling for Guinness. And Irish bonding's logo was the red hand. So the red hand then, in honour of the bottling, because it says quality bottling. So the Guinness is the Guinness label, And this bit is to represent who was actually doing the bottling of Guinness, and it was Irish Bonding, who were in East Belfast and Prince Regent Road. And then just to look at the royals again, how they use it through. Our late Queen, here we have in her coronation dress, you can see that she has all the nations in there. The shamrocks there to represent here. You have the thistle, you have the rose, you have everything throughout it. This is a piece of sculpture from Buckingham Palace. If you're ever over in Buckingham Palace and you wander around and have a look at the architecture, you will see again the shamrock, the thistle, the rose, everything, the daffodil, everything to represent England, Scotland, Wales and Ireland at the time. And then we have the now Prince and Princess of Wales, who, the Princess of Wales at the time, who's the Duchess of Cambridge, she had the same thing. She had the rose, the thistle, the daffodil and the shamrock sewn into her dress. And that has been a tradition throughout, and you've seen it there recently in the coronation that just took place again with the Queen Consort, who's now the Queen, and she had all of those represented on her dress as well. So just to finish off, entwined misconceptions. It is hoped that by highlighting the many misconceptions associated with these two symbols and remove some of the stigmas around them, that we can educate our communities so that we can move forward together in the future and embrace our common identity. The hope is by looking at this that you'll have seen how much they are intertwined. How much as well, I think it was very brave. You and I were at the service up in St Mark's. Very, very brave of the band to hold a St Patrick's Day and moving forward. There is no reason why both communities shouldn't be celebrating St Patrick or celebrating with the red hand or the shamrock. They don't belong to any one side or the other, but the problem is that because of over recent years, and again it's recent years in our time, things have started to change, and I think many of us would feel uncomfortable going into the St Patrick's Day parades in Belfast because of the significance of them now. But this is hoped to try and highlight, going out round young people to try and show them that really throughout the history there was no, that it should be either side or either community. There's no ownership of anything. Everybody has a right to it. As I said, we live in a democracy. I hope we do. Thank you.
Yeah.